In the previous presentation, we examined the relevance of Codex, starting from history, how many members are there, 99% of the world population, what is its mandate, and for what is the relevance of Codex to countries and in particular the developing countries. Now in this presentation, let us study what is the structure of Codex. What is the structure of the Codex Alimentarius Commission? Which are the different Codex committees for different areas of work in Codex? What is the role of the Codex Secretariat? How Codex meetings are hosted? We know that there are three sisters of the SPS agreement: OIE for animal health, IPPC for plant health, Codex for human health. This I explained in the first presentation. What is the organizational structure of Codex? So on the top, there is the Codex Alimentarius Commission, which is the global body with headquarters in Rome. The Codex Secretariat is based in Rome. 187 countries plus one member organization, which is the European Union, are members of the Codex Alimentarius Commission. Then there is the executive committee. It's like an executive board which makes recommendations to the commission for taking decisions, which has a chairperson. There are 3 vice chairpersons from 3 different countries. Then there are 6 regional coordinators. The entire world is divided into 6 regions: Asia, Europe, Africa, Near East, North America and Southwest Pacific, Latin America and Caribbean countries. There are 6 regions. Therefore, 6 regional coordinators who present the views of the region, who look after the interest of the region. Then there are 7 members elected on a geographic basis. Why 7? First of all, 6 for the 6 regional coordinators, but the North America and Southwest Pacific, because they are geographically poles apart, so these have been divided into 2 parts, and therefore there are 2 members of this region. And then there can be advisors to the members, but who are not members of the executive committee. So essentially it is the chairperson, the 3 vice chairpersons, 6 regional coordinators and 7 members elected on geographic basis, 17 members of the executive committee. The chairperson and the 3 vice chairpersons are also the chairperson and vice chairpersons of the Codex Alimentarius Commission. This is the broad structure or the broad organizational structure of Codex. But how does the entire work of a standard setting take place? The work is carried out by the Codex Secretariat, which prepares the documentation, which advises the chairpersons, and there are several activities carried out by the Codex Secretariat, which I will explain in one of the subsequent slides. Then there are Codex subsidiary bodies. There are general subject committees. For example, a general subject is pesticide residue, food hygiene, veterinary drugs, general principles, and there are commodity committees. Commodity committees like Fruits and Vegetables Committee, Processed Fruits and Vegetables Committee, Fish Committee, Fats and Oils Committee, Milk Committee. So they are vertical committees, the commodity committees. But the general subject committees set standards which apply across all commodities, across all verticals. And there are 6 regional coordinating committees. So we have 24 subsidiary bodies, 10 general subject, 8 commodity committees and 6 regional coordinating committees. 24, and the executive committee is also a committee which is like an executive board, and therefore we have 25 committees under the Codex Alimentarius Commission. Now what are these general subject and commodity committees? General subject committees: food additives, contaminants, food hygiene. Let me also explain. Each of these committees is hosted by a country. So that country has a secretariat which works in collaboration with the Codex Secretariat in Rome for convening the meeting of that committee. So the Food Additives Committee In all these names that you can see on the screen, CC stands for Codex Committee. FA in this one, the first one is additives, food additives. So the Codex Committee on Food Additives, it is chaired by China. The Codex Committee on Contaminants in Food is chaired by Netherlands. Codex Committee on Food Hygiene is chaired by the United States. Codex Committee on Food Inspection and Certification Systems is chaired by Australia. Codex Committee on Food Labeling is chaired by Canada. Codex Committee on General Principles, which lays down the rules and procedures which have to be applied by all the committees. This committee is chaired by France. Codex Committee on Methods of Analysis and Sampling is chaired by Hungary. Codex Committee on Nutrition and Foods for Special Dietary Uses is chaired by Germany. Codex Committee on Pesticide Residues, China. Codex Committee on Residues of Veterinary Drugs and Food by United States. Look, all these subject committees, general subject committees, are generally chaired by all developed countries because they took the lead. What is the function? They develop all embracing concepts and principles applying to foods in general. They endorse the views of commodity committees in respect of the role that they perform and also develop recommendations for the health and safety of consumers. As I said, CCGP is responsible for dealing with the procedural and general matters of the Commission. They do not set any horizontal standards. They only frame procedures. Then there are commodity committees. The Fish Committee, Fish and Fishery Products. This was chaired by Norway, but it has completed its work and it has been adjourned sine die in 2016, very recently, in July 2016. Codex Committee on Fats and Oils is chaired by Malaysia. Codex Committee on Fresh Fruits and Vegetables is chaired by Mexico. Codex Committee on Processed Fruits and Vegetables is chaired by United States. Then these are the three committees. Codex Committee on Milk and Milk Products, which is chaired by New Zealand. Codex Committee on Sugars, which is chaired by Colombia. And Codex Committee on Cereals, Pulses and Legumes, which is chaired by United States. These were reactivated. They had originally completed their work. They were adjourned sine die, but they have been reactivated and are working by correspondence. And then there is a committee, Codex Committee on Spices and Culinary Herbs. This was approved by the Codex Alimentarius Commission in 2013. After 50 years, Codex Alimentarius was set up. And this committee is chaired by India. This is the only committee that India chairs. There are several commodity committees which have been adjourned sine die and they are no longer in operation. Cocoa and cocoa products, natural mineral waters, both of them were chaired by Switzerland, vegetable proteins by Canada, and meat hygiene by New Zealand. Then there are intergovernmental task forces. All these intergovernmental task forces have been dissolved. What is the difference between dissolution and adjournment? Committees have a lot of work to do and they complete their work during course of time in several years and then they're adjourned sine die. Whereas intergovernmental task forces are set up for a limited work, a responsibility which is given to countries for setting guidelines and setting procedures. There's an animal feeding, antimicrobial resistance, fruits and vegetable juices, very niche areas, and they have limited scope of work, limited period of time. All these committees have been dissolved because they completed their work, but very recently, because of the recent surge in antimicrobial resistance, a lot of countries have expressed concern. This has been discussed in the World Health Assembly recently in May. All countries are concerned about the inappropriate use of antibiotics by consumers. There are residues of antibiotics in food products, for example, in honey or meat, or even sometimes in fruits and vegetables. So this task force has been reactivated in 2016, in July 2016, and will be chaired by Korea. Earlier also it was chaired by Korea. There are 6 regional committees. CC Africa, which is chaired by Kenya. North America and Southwest Pacific, these are all regional coordinating committees, 6 regions as I said. This is chaired by Vanuatu. CC Euro, it is chaired by Netherlands. CC Asia, which has 23 countries. India is chairing that coordinating committee. So India currently has two committees under its fold, Spices Committee and the Coordinating Committee for Asia. It is for a period of 2 years and is likely to be extended by another 2 years, and then some other country will chair it, whereas the Spices will continue to be chaired by India. Codex Committee on Latin America, Codex Coordinating Committee for Latin America and Caribbean countries is chaired by Chile, and for the Near East it is Iran which is chairing it. So there are 10 general subject committees, 8 commodity committees and 6 regional committees, and different countries are chairing it and they are hosting it also. All the expenses are incurred by them. How do they carry out their work? There is a scientific advice which has to be provided, because international standards are science based. Codex standards are science based. It's a part of the WTO requirement, SPS committee. You've just heard that in my previous presentations. So there are 4 scientific expert committees which have been set up by FAO and WHO. JECFA, Joint Expert Committee on Food Additives, but it not only works on food additives, it also works for contaminants in food as well as residues of veterinary drugs. JMPR, which is the Joint Expert Meeting on Pesticide Residues. JEMRA for Microbiological Risk Assessment, that is microbiological standards, whether it is for milk or fish or fruits and vegetables, basically bacteria and virus. And then there is a 4th one, which is the Joint Expert Meeting on Nutrition. It was not functional until now, but it is now getting revived to provide scientific advice to the Nutrition Committee, which is chaired by Germany. As I said, the Secretariat of entire Codex work is in Rome, which is the principal secretariat, and its responsibility is to coordinate the entire documentation for all the meetings of all committees, including the Executive Committee as well as the Codex Alimentarius Commission. The Secretariat is also responsible for advising the chairpersons of each committee on technical and procedural matters. And they prepare a report of the meeting which is adopted by that committee or by the Executive Committee or by the Commission. Since every Codex committee is chaired by a country or hosted by a country, there is a host country secretariat which works in collaboration with the Codex Secretariat in Rome for developing the documentation and is mainly responsible for the logistics. What are those logistics? I will explain that. But before that, the responsibility of the Codex Secretariat, apart from scheduling the meetings in consultation with the host country, preparing the documentation and distribution and preparing the report, they are also supposed to send out the invitations for the meetings. They are supposed to prepare the provisional agenda in consultation with the host country and circulate it. And they also prepare the working papers, the agenda papers for the Codex meeting. What is the role of the host country? How is it done? Any country which wants to host a committee has to make that proposal. For example, when the Spices Committee was formed, India made the proposal that India thinks that there is a need for setting up a commodity committee for spices and culinary herbs, gave the justification, and also said that India would be willing to host this committee. The Commission agreed, and while agreeing so, they ensured that India takes the responsibility for arranging all the logistics for the meeting, that is the room, the hall, the several meeting rooms, the interpretation, the translation of documentation of all these things, provide information on the availability of hotels, currencies, have to make sure that visas are provided. The countries who have to come to India have to obtain a visa before coming. They have to apply according to the procedures. They have to make a recommendation to the Indian embassies in different countries to facilitate grant of the visa. All these things are a commitment which have to be made by a host country, and India has made all these commitments when it came to hosting of the Spices Committee. And in that process, there is an agreement which has to be signed between India and FAO on behalf of the Codex Secretariat, that India would be willing to do that, and all countries follow that same process. Then once that is done, once the Commission agrees that a country would be a host country, they first agree that we need a committee. It has to be done by consensus. The CAC stands for Codex Alimentarius Commission. Then they designate a country. For example, India was designated for spices. Then they define the terms of reference of that committee. What is the work that they are going to do? The country signs the MOU with FAO. Then the country designates a chair, designates a host country secretariat, which is going to work in collaboration with the Codex Secretariat. They have to facilitate visas. So the whole world has to be informed that this is the host country secretariat for so and so subject matter or a commodity, spices in case of India, and then that point, which is the Codex contact point, is responsible for ensuring all the logistics arrangements and grant of visas. And if there is a working group, a similar process is followed, whether it is an electronic working group or a physical working group. And this is how the entire work of Codex is carried out by the Codex Commission, by the Codex Secretariat, by the Codex committees, host country. This is broadly the role and structure of the Codex work. Thank you.